just going to go ahead. All right. Okay. So our topic today was actually suggested by a participant from last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess. She was talking about that idea of when you're traveling a less traveled path, how do you find peace, confidence, and trust that what you're doing is the right thing? And it's such an important thing because, you know, as parents, we obviously want the best for our kids. And it's sometimes, often, really, really hard to know what that is. And when you're doing something wild and crazy, like considering the idea that maybe a conventional school path isn't the best thing for your child, that's a really, really big decision. And there's lots of people around you who are looking at you thinking, that's crazy. There's a lot of angst that can come along with taking an unconventional path. So I think the suggestion to have this topic was a really good one. And in thinking about what to say about it, yeah, there's so much that comes up. So here's my thinking. When we first make a decision to travel a less traveled path, be it unschooling, homeschooling, going to school but not in a usual way, it's usually triggered by some kind of instinct. There's something in you that thinks that the usual way is not the right thing for your kid. I remember feeling that when my eldest was kindergarten age, and around me, everybody was getting ready to send their kids to school. And I just was like, yeah, no, it's just not feeling, like it just wasn't quite feeling right. Or I had reasons like, oh, I don't know about him being under fluorescent lights for X number of hours a day. But basically what it was there was some instinct in me that said, I'm not sure about this. And that was, of course, connected to, well, what do I feel is best for his well-being? You know, when you're holding your little baby or you're pregnant, like it's all about the well-being of that child. And so that is still driving you when you're starting to think about things like this. So once that instinct has kicked in and made you question the decision to go conventional, then I think it's really important to recognize and to kind of give yourself the grace to realize that you're stopping something. You're either pulling your child out of school or you're not jumping on the school bus along with most other people. You're stopping something in order to start something else. And stopping something, turning your back on it, saying no, all of that, again, it's that grace to give ourselves to realize that's a big deal. I think we don't often think about that idea of what we've stopped in order to do what we're doing. We get caught up in, how do we homeschool? How do we send our kids to school only 3 days a week? How? But it's important to realize that underneath all of that is the emotions around, I'm not doing that thing that I probably thought I would, and that most people around me are doing. So that sense of stopping. In case you haven't thought of this analogy, it's kind of that idea of stopping relates back to a caterpillar butterfly life cycle. A caterpillar has to stop being a caterpillar in order to cocoon and become a butterfly. So that idea of stopping in order to start is with us in nature as well. And it's often at that moment when we realize we're starting something different, we're stopping something, that the fear enters. So we were driven by our instinct to make some kind of different decision. And somewhere along that way of like starting to do things differently, fear comes in. The fear that we're not making a good decision for our child, the fear that our child won't be okay, the fear that our child won't be able to go to university, or that they won't be able to get a job, or that they won't be successful, or they won't be socialized, or whatever it is. All those fears come in and sit beside this instinct of doing what's right for our child's well-being. And we're caught in this like mental and emotional tug of war. And it's brutal. It can be a really, really hard place to be. On the one hand, you look at your child and think, yeah, if your child is a teen and you've got many years of this behind you, it's like, wow, I can see how this lifestyle has benefited them. Or if you're looking at a young child and there's many years ahead, I can see what I hope this would be. But there's still that fear of the what ifs, the what did we stop that we maybe shouldn't have stopped. So they sit beside each other, and then there's this tug of war. So if you're dealing with this, I think that a really good first step is to go back to, what was your why? Why did you do this in the first place? When I'm working with clients who are making a decision about whether to do this, one of the things I suggest is to do a capture the moment. Picture, list, essay, whatever it is for you. Think about why. What is your particular situation? Is it that your child is super gentle and you think they're going to get lost in school? Is it that your child really needs to move a lot and you really know that sitting in a desk for as many hours as they're expected is not going to work out for them? Is it that your child has been in school and the act of walking through the door brings fear and anxiety and stress, and you know they just can't keep on doing that and be well inside themselves? What is going on that caused you to be in this place? So that moment of decision is so important. And even if you're 2 years on, you can still go back to that and say, oh yeah, like all of the uncertainties and the fears and whatever that I have now, let's just go back to where we were at when we decided to do this. And that can help you to have a sort of a self-assessment over, is this making sense? Whatever was going on back there, has that gotten better as a result of our decision to walk a different path? So that capture the moment can be really, really important to check back with. With the feelings of uncertainty and not feeling confident that it's the right thing, all of that can just make us feel really, really lost. I really like analogies, and I've got a few that were competing for first place for this one, so I'm just going to give you both of them. So if you think of a kaleidoscope, those like tubes where you can turn the end and they've got little colorful things inside them. What you have inside the kaleidoscope is a finite number of little beads or whatever they are. But as you turn the end, they create different patterns. So sometimes when you're in a position and you're just feeling really lost, that maybe your kid's not doing enough math, or they're playing too many video games, or they don't have enough friends, or they're arguing with you a lot, whatever it is there one thing that you can change? Is there one movement you can make that will allow things to shift, allow a new pattern to be created? And sometimes that little thing that you change, that way of turning the end of the kaleidoscope, might be deciding to suspend judgment on whether it's working for a little while. If you're feeling a lot of stress because they're not doing math, maybe you say to yourself, you know what, for the next month, math is the M word, and I'm not even going to let myself think about it. Then I'm going to see how I feel a month from now. Maybe it's deciding that you're going to have a special moment together once a week. You're going to make lunch together and whatever it is, include a favorite food. And that action of doing something at the end of your kaleidoscope is going to change the way everything shakes out. And that new pattern is going to bring new feelings and emotions and likely new directions. So when you're feeling stuck, sometimes just changing one thing makes a big difference. The other way that I think about that, or the other analogy for that, is one of the things I really like to do is hike in the forest off the main trails. So when you're on these so-called faint trails or historic trails, sometimes it's really hard to find the trail. You're doing it almost by feel. It's like, oh, the ground feels a bit harder here than it does over there, or it's really hard to find it. And sometimes you're stuck. It's like, I'm here and I cannot see where the trail is. I don't know where the path forward is. And it's amazing how often taking one step to the side means you suddenly see it, because there was a tree blocking it, or that the light shifted so that you can see that slight difference in where the actual trail is. So again, that idea of what's one thing that you can change when you're feeling lost, and how is that one change going to actually impact what you see of the way forward? So I think that's a really important thing to hold on to, is that a small change can have a big impact on how you're feeling about it all. So those are the kind of feeling sides of it, and the ways to adjust some of the feelings. I think that, again, this idea of stopping something and starting something new. When we start something new, we want to find out a lot about it. And I think we often don't realize, most of us went to school, everybody around us goes to school, society is structured around people going to school. And if they homeschool, it's expected that they sit at a table with their mom and they do this, the academic work. Like, there's a lot of expectations around what education looks like. So if we're choosing to follow an unconventional education path, the more we can understand about what that world looks like, the more knowledge we have, the more connections we have, the more community we have, the more we've read about other people's experiences, the more that unconventional world can start to feel conventional, but just in a different way. Because when it's like what everyone does and what we do, that's really hard. If we can get to a point of feeling some people go to school, some people don't go to school, some people homeschool with a curriculum, some people do self-directed learning. When we can feel that all of these things are different choices, it can take a lot of that fear away. It can give us more of a feeling of peace and confidence because we know what some of the outcomes might be. And I think that also then helps us to understand that so-called normal path, which we're used to thinking you go to school and you get a diploma and then you go to university and you get a job and then you're happy and you're all of that. It's always also good to have the knowledge that that path isn't always as straightforward as that. What does it look like when somebody is on that path and it's not working for them? It can mean anxiety and depression that has a massive impact on somebody's ability to be successful in themselves, never mind in the outward trappings of success, of having a job and all of that. When the school path is not working, there's so much that's lost. Even when the school path appears to be working, even when you've got a child who's getting 90% at everything, there's still the loss of what they might have been experiencing had they been in a more self-directed approach to life. So these are choices, whether you are on a conventional path or a less conventional path, you still win some and lose some. And I think as we're in this position of helping our kids in a way that's an unconventional path, if we can keep being aware of what the experience of people who are on that more conventional path really is, then that can help us to feel confidence in our unconventional path. And to recognize that, if you, for example, my son was a self-directed learner at home until he decided to go to school for grade 12. And there were some adjustments that he had to make when he got there. Because things like, having to do a test and keeping an eye on the clock on the wall, he'd never done that before. So the first test he wrote, he completely ran out of time because there wasn't even a clock on the wall had he thought to look at it. And he just didn't have any sense of, there's a time limit here. This was something that could be perceived as something that he didn't know or a loss because he had done this unconventional path. But it was easy for him to go, oh, I just have to learn that. No big deal. I'll do it. And to close that gap or to make that so that that wasn't a loss anymore. And likewise for people who have been in a conventional system, when they come out of, maybe it's high school, maybe it's university, and they're suddenly faced with the choice of, well, what do I do now? They might have no idea how to live their days, how to make choices, because they've never had the opportunity to make real choices before. They've always been in a system that kept letting them know what the next step was. So I think it's this piece of, it's like stepping out of the certainty of, oh, well, if you go to school and university, you'll get a job and all of that. It's that certainty. Recognizing that nobody has that certainty. So when we can all step into a place of, there's different options and there's going to be things about them that will work well and things that might not work as well, but they're all different options. And our children and our teens, by understanding that they have options, we're setting them up really, really well for their future. The understanding that if you go to school and you're choosing to go to school, that's a choice. And that's something that really sets you up well for your future. And so that even if as a parent, we can offer our children the opportunity to make those choices, then it's really helping them as they move forward. So to summarize my sort of thoughts on all of that, then, this idea of coming back to what triggered you to take this less conventional route. When you're feeling unsure and unconfident and lost, what is something you can do to shift? Is there somebody you can go and have a coffee with that will make you have a different perspective that just might be what you need to move forward with more ease in that moment? And parallel to all of it, how much can you learn about schooling, deschooling, how learning works, what success is in different cultures, like all of that? The more you can learn, the more you can feel confident that there are many options and help your child and support them to move through the one that they've chosen. So I'm going to leave my thoughts there and open it up to your thoughts. So you're more than welcome to ask questions, weigh in on anything I said, take the conversation somewhere. I didn't take it within this idea of how do we find peace, confidence, and trust when we're doing this unconventional education thing. So I'll stop the recording there.